Morning. This Sunday I thought I would try to do my job and preach at the same time, and it's a whole different type of thing to try to do. Thankfully Jen's sitting back there in case anything happens. Not that she can do much, but her presence there helps a lot. So Mary's Magnificat. Mary was a poor girl in Nazareth that an angel, Gabriel, came to her and said, "Do not be afraid." And I would think that Mary was very much so afraid. I could just imagine if an angel appeared in my room and said, "Don't be afraid." I would say, first of all, "Gabe, I'm terrified." And Mary is sitting on this for a while, right? She's got to accept this. She finally says yes. I don't know if it's a reluctant yes or a yes. Might be more like a yes. So the cool thing about the Magnificat in Luke is that Luke really brings women and the poor to the forefront. And so you see things like Mary saying, that she wants, or that the hungry would be filled and the rich would be sent away empty, that the powerful would be torn from their thrones, and that God would lift the lowly. It also shows that things like this was still happening even in Mary's time, that there were the oppressed and there were the oppressors, that this isn't anything new. And even looking at Mary's prayer of being for love, justice, and again, a joy or hesitant-filled yes, that she had hope for many. Now, I would like to share a little bit of my background with Mary because we're fairly new friends, I would say. I don't think I've really ever read the Magnificat in detail in the last, probably until the last year or so. Because in my traditions, Mary was used more as a vessel, right? She bore Jesus, and then we just kind of do away with Mary. We don't really hear about her anymore, and if we bring up Mary in these circles, that was idolatry. So I always was very at arm's length with Mary. But then, the person that I am, always questioning things, I'm like, why do we question Mary so much? Why would these people that had grown so accustomed to trust be at arm's length with Mary? And again, I would go back to it being because she stood for justice, and she stood for wanting things to be whole. She birthed a son that would come into this world and change the lives of many. We were kind of joking about before service this song, "Mary, Did You Know?" Maybe she knew, maybe she didn't, but she was still an amazing fixture in Jesus' life and now in our lives. One thing that I read that I really enjoyed is that the Magnificat, which also means "my soul magnifies the Lord," is that it is an invitation for us into Mary's story. And there's nothing more powerful than being invited into someone's story. And then also looking up the prayer and trying to see if there were other prayers that were similar. And one that really stood out was in 1 Samuel 2. And this is when Hannah, who was a barren woman, was really she wanted to have a baby. And finally she was pregnant with Samuel, and she made a deal with a high priest named Eli and said, "If I have this baby, Samuel will be yours." And there's a song that she sings that is very similar to the Magnificat. And this was written about 1,000 years before Mary's Magnificat. So to see that the Magnificat of Mary was not frozen in time, but occurs generations before Mary's and generations after. And also with Hannah, she had Samuel, and after she had Samuel, she had seven other kids. I just thought that was pretty cool thing to put in there. And then to bring it into modern times, a song that we sang today, The Canticle of the Turning, again, I didn't hear until last year at the seminary's Christmas thing. And my Pentecostal soul loves this song because it talks about fire and turning the world upside down, and it's gonna burn, like, but in a holy fire. But we're singing the same things that Mary was saying, that the poor will be fed and the hungry will be fed and that justice will be served. Again, this is something that's been happening for thousands of years. When Mary was in Nazareth, it was under the Roman Empire. And we can look at our conditions today and it can kind of feel, kind of the same thing. We still have the oppressed, we still have the oppressors, but we still fight for justice, no matter what. Now, what does joy have to do with all this? Because that's part of the sermon and the pink candle that we lit today. I would say that through all this, when Mary quoted the Magnificat, it was to her cousin Elizabeth, who at the time was pregnant with John the Baptist. Mary was in community, and I see that joy is found in community and in celebrations. I'm trying to slow down. And we lift each other up and advocate for one another as we wait for the return of Christ. And what does that even mean? Is it a literal returning? Is it a return to ourselves opposed to our false selves? Is it even a return to joy and justice? What does this mean to you? Now, there are other ways that in my life that I've seen a Magnificat or where I can feel my soul magnifying the Lord. And that's within different queer communities that I am involved in. One being Color Splash, which is a youth camp for queer and LGBT youth. And these are students that throughout the year they are bullied at home, at school, and so we provide a safe place for them. And it's our joy and our resistance, right, to provide this safe space for these youth to truly be themselves and to experiment of, who they want to be and who they are. Another organization that I'm involved in is called Veterans for Equality, and we are a veteran group with the LGBT community, and we find our joy in continuing to fight for our community and those that have served in the military. What we do is we are called to go to drag shows to offer some protection, and we've also gone to things like Beto's, like when Beto was here speaking, we would go and we kind of present this friendly presence, but also like, don't mess with us. Because it throws them off, right? They see that we're in the military, so that already kind of gives us favor with the, kind of watch words, right? But with the other side. But then when they see that we're, LGBT veterans with the rainbows and stuff, that kind of makes them go, oh, wait, messes them up a little bit. And then sometimes I'll throw my collar on just to do 3 and be like, oh, wow. So that's my joy and my resistance sometimes is my appearance, because I know that, the places that I step in, especially with a collar on, I can't take it for granted. I can't just, be about my day-to-day self. And a group of us from the seminary went to the DFPS, which is the Department of Family Protective Services. We were there Friday and read testimonies of either transgender children, their parents were given testimonies, or teachers And there were about 35 of them. And there was the joy and resistance of us being together and knowing that it might be falling on deaf ears, but we're still doing the work. We're still trying to help. We're still trying to make this a safe place for all. It's 2023, close to 2023, and we shouldn't be scared to give testimonies in front of people. But that's the reality. And then there's current events that have happened and ways to find joy when it seems almost impossible. We saw this week that Brittany Griner was released and was able to come home. And we can rejoice in that. We can rejoice with her that she is now back on her home soil. Yeah, we can continue to fight for those that are still in prison, like David Whalen. It's not a and or but. It's, it's together. Like, we still need other people to come home, but we can rejoice in the one. When Radhika and I were coming back from our honeymoon, we had found out about the shooting at Club Q, and finding out that there were 5 people in the community that were killed. And I had texted my spiritual director, and I forgot that she lived in Colorado, and she knew someone that knew 2 of the people that were murdered. And it just shows, like, even within the community, within the queer community itself, it's large, but it's also small, and that there were those connections that were so close. And being in this kind of funk, and then we went to a vigil that was, I think it was on a Wednesday night, and the vigils that were all over the states were very holy. And I'm sure all of them were also filled with laughter at one point or another when they were sharing stories of these 5 lives that were lost, that they were still able to find joy in a very, very difficult time. Another sense of joy that's been a long, long time of resistance is the Respect for Marriage Act was passed this week as well. And it was kind of difficult, like, getting married and going, okay, is my marriage going to make it through? Like, are we going to still be able to be married within the next, year or so? So we're good to go, which is amazing. And then also to bring up Dennis Murphy. I didn't get to know him, which I'm really sad about, but I've also heard that he was just a very genuine, nice guy with quite a sense of humor. And I would love to hear stories. I know I'm going to hear stories during Joys and Concerns, but I'd love to hear personal stories. So, in wrapping up, joy as resistance can look like many different things. It can look like advocating for those who need it. It can also look like prophetic acts of not knowing what is going to happen, but choosing to have joy either way. May it be so.